Hi everyone, and welcome to The Path to Reason. I'm your host, Cindy Plaza, and tonight we're going to talk about Catholicism. Initially the idea was to talk about only about the statement the Pope gave last week about civil unions, but something happened the very next day, and I want to address that too. So it's going to be two quick topics today. So the first one is this statement from the Pope, which I'm going to read if I can find it. So he basically said that he agreed for the church to provide same-sex unions, civil unions. So he said homosexual people have a right to be in a family. They are children of God and have a right to a family. Nobody should be thrown out or be made miserable over it. What we have to create is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered. I stood up for that. So I don't think there's conspiracy behind this. I think the Pope genuinely thinks that this is an improvement. He's been rather progressive, if that means something, regarding the church. And he probably thinks that's an improvement. However, I'm French, and in 2012, our government decided to propose a law to allow same-sex marriage. And before that, in the early 2000s, we already implemented a civil union for everyone, including gay couples. So when we started to discuss those this law we wanted to implement about same-sex marriage, the civil union was already in place since roughly 12, 13 years. And so the argument we had from the right, and including the religious right in France, which is very, very small in comparison to England or the US or other countries, was that why are you trying to give gay people marriage when they already have civil union? Let them have their thing and let us keep our marriage. That was the argument given by the right. And this reminds me a lot of what happened in the US in the 50s and 60s, when racism was still at its peak, and the fight to allow or to give Black people the same right as the rest of the population. There was for a few years there was this idea that they could be given separate but equal rights. So the idea was to give them the same thing as white people had, but separate. Like instead of having just white and Black toilets, Black people were allowed to go to the same toilets, but in the same toilets they have a sink for white people and a sink for Black people. So there was this idea that, yeah, they're not the same, we're going to give them roughly the same thing, but separate. And that's the exact same argument I see coming here. It's we don't need to give them access to marriage, because we know that marriage is sacred, blah blah blah. But we can give them something similar, so they can just stop complaining because they're discriminated against. And that's how I see it, and that's how many people saw it, including religious people back in France in 2012. So, is this statement by the Pope going to change anything? I doubt it, because I don't see it happening in Vatican in the next couple of centuries. And outside the Vatican, he has no authority, and this is too much of a political thing to be influenced by the Pope. If you look at Poland, for example, they're pretty much getting rid of abortion right now for religious reasons, and I don't remember at the top of my head if they allow unions or marriage for gay people, but if it's the case, then it will be probably next on the list. So that's what happened on the 21st of October, and the 22nd. The Irish government decided to hide, in a way, the data of what the nuns did during the last century. So, for a little bit of background, let me explain. Between 1921 and 1965, I think, the Irish government delegated to some nuns congregations the authority to deal with the problem of single mother, because according to Catholicism, any child who is born outside of marriage, or any even sexual activity during outside marriage, is forbidden, and any child who is born outside the sanctity of marriage cannot be sanctified, and he cannot be given. He cannot be buried on sacred grounds. He basically, he's nothing. And according to Catholic tradition, at least in Ireland and also in Scotland, we will see it later. So during those 30, 40 years, some nuns congregations took care of those mothers who were pregnant and left alone by the father. I shouldn't call them this way, but and so, since they single mother were not accepted in Irish society, because at the time Irish society was extremely Catholic, then they were taken care of by those nuns congregations, separate of the world, basically. And since those children, and including the women too, they were called fallen, because they had committed an unspeakable act, which is to have sex outside marriage, even though the man was equally responsible. They were considered as fallen, and the children were basically left here to die. So during those 40 years, thousands of children were malnourished and not taken care of, and many of them died. And in 75, an old septic tank was discovered, and they were almost 800 children buried in there. Well, not buried because it's not a burial, but 795 sets of bones were found in that septic tank, for kids age of a few days to 8 years old. And so when this broke out, at first it was thought that it was a mass grave from the plague that happened in 1840s, I think. But after more research, they discovered that in fact it was the nuns who let those kids die. And then an investigation was led, and the rare nuns that were still alive didn't cooperate with the police to at least to identify the kids or even the mothers that were concerned by the situation. And on the 22nd, the Irish government decided to bury basically the report that came out from this investigation. So obviously there is no link between those two stories, the Pope and this one. However, they are both separate stories that are directly linked to Catholicism view. And the reason why I also wanted to bring this Ireland story is because I've been debating recently some people about abortion, and this is typically what happens in a place where women cannot have abortion. Kids are born and left to die because they cannot be taken care of. So when I see people going to pretend that the child is sacred, life is sacred at conception and not at birth, all those hypocrite arguments, they just break down when you get to these kind of stories. And this is not the only one. It's believed that there are at least 4 or 5 mass graves like this in Ireland. Another one was discovered in Scotland with roughly 400 kids. So this is specific to Catholicism and not Christianity at large. I would agree with that, but it's not. So sometimes you hear theists say, "Yeah, but people don't do bad things in the name of religion. They do bad things because they're bad people." And in this specific case, that's simply not true, because it's the direct consequence of the belief that marriage is sacred, and anything that goes outside this marriage is fallen. So no one would ever do that without this belief. So the belief is directly responsible for those kids to die. So that to me is it's a horrible story. You will have the link in below the video to understand all the situation. But yeah, that's horrible, and it shows that the double standards of some theists, that when it suits them, they will claim that life is sacred, and when it doesn't, well, it's like all those people who call themselves pro-life. Most of them are in favor of death penalty, are against any sort of financial help for poor people, for food stamps and all those things. So not all of them, of course, but many, a great many of them. So yeah, I just wanted to point out this hypocrisy, and that's all for tonight. Next week, Friday at the same hour, I will be very happy to have Daniel Fisk-Bennett and Andy Hall. We're going to talk about psychology and how the lack of understanding of the human mind leads to bad arguments and bad reasoning, because when we watch debates, we realize that we tend to, especially on the atheist side, we tend to focus a lot on critical thinking and mostly on skepticism and logic. But I realized in the last few weeks that the fact that people understand so little of how the human mind works, that also creates a lot of bad information and bad reasoning. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. Also, later in the evening, I will have one debate, and maybe one day prior or one day later, I don't know yet, I will have another one with the person I mentioned earlier. His name is Cyrus White, and we're going to talk about abortion again. And so if you're interested in this, please like, subscribe, hit the bell button. I will be publishing an Amazon wishlist soon. So if people want to help me grow this channel, they will be able to do it this way. I don't want to set up a Patreon yet. So that's how I will do it. And I wish you a very good evening, a very good day, depending on where you are. And have a nice weekend, everyone. Goodbye.